Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today I want to give you guys an update on the Kaylee Gain case. And the reason I want to do so is because unlike when this story initially broke, and there was an attempt to racialize this in the direction of making it a black on white attack, we kind of have a reversal, and now people are going out of their way to excuse the behavior of the black girl who, need I remind you, smashed this girl's head into the pavement, causing a brain bleed after the fight was essentially already over, put her in the hospital 4 months, in order to say that she was actually the victim, and that after winning the fight, smashing her head into the pavement was actually a part of the self-defense aspect of this whole situation. Now, we're going to get into it, but before we do, I want to thank everybody who signed up over on actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money. Okay?
Your support is greatly appreciated. So in my previous video on this channel, I covered this story in I think what will still prove to be an incredibly and insanely accurate way. And the reason why is because even though there was a viral video of about 17 seconds that was circulating around of just the head smashing part, I decided that I was going to look for a more full video. And one of the things that I noticed was the fact that these two girls were clearly and obviously squaring up for a fight before the viral moment. And during the course of the action, you actually had a black girl try to help Kaylee, and a white girl and another black girl try to help the black girl, who is called Mornice. This is the head smasher girl. Now, just to reiterate my position so it's clear to everybody out there in the audience, what I deemed this to be was a mutual fight that was engaged in by two young women. And by the way, while that's not okay, that is completely different from the racially motivated attack that was being depicted by many on social media. However, I made this 100% clear. The head smashing at the end of the fight, when Mornice gets on top of Kaylee and starts banging her head into the concrete over and over and over again, ultimately resulting in her being in the hospital 4 months with a brain bleed and possible permanent consequences from said fight, was above and beyond and should be charged as above and beyond what is normal and within the parameters of a fight. Mornice was totally inappropriate right here. Some suggested that she should be charged with attempted murder. In fact, others were saying she should be charged with murder because they didn't care enough to even look into the fact that this girl was alive, by the way. And I got comments under my video where I said, there's no evidence that she died. Well, guess what? It's months later, and I'm still right on that. And that, yeah, she should be charged in an appropriate way for those actions post the engagement of the fight. Now, a lot of people say, well, you know what? You start something, you deserve the full consequences of this. I've heard this on this channel many a times from people out there in the audience, but in reality, in actuality, self-defense or mutual combat only goes up to a certain point. There is a point where you can escalate a fight completely out of hand, and I believe that the head smashing, again, video linked in full in the description, I can't show it to you on this YouTube channel, crosses that line. It is above and beyond. It is inappropriate. However, we live in the absolute dumbest timeline of all time. So while I made commentary based on the fact that people were trying to inject race into this particular situation when the evidence didn't actually show that, while I made commentary on the fact that people were implying that this girl Kaylee ended up dying as a result of her injuries when there was no evidence for that, the situation is kind of completely reversed, and now all these different various black outlets and black figures have decided to embrace Mornice, say that everything she did was A-okay, first class all the way, and they started to defame and attack Kaylee as this horrible person. And ironically, a lot of the footage that they use of Kaylee to show that she's a thug and she deserved this is footage of her hanging out with other black kids and kind of embracing the thug black culture, that if you were to label a black kid with doing that as a reason why they deserve to get their head smashed into the concrete, you would be called racist. So once again, we live under these absolutely absurd circumstances where people don't just look at a fight that obviously progressed way too far, that obviously had a level of viciousness that was wildly inappropriate, where a girl nearly died, might have permanent brain injury from it, and we're supposed to pretend like, yeah, you just pick a side, and then you say, oh, my team, my skin color is correct no matter what, and that's how we're operating. And a perfect example of this is this article that, of course, some jackoff ended up sending me just the screenshot of the article rather than the full context, and when you read it, you realize how insane it actually is. And it comes from the Atlanta Black Star, and if that wasn't enough of a hint on the perspective of this particular outlet, it's in the politics and news section rather than in the crime section, because remember, this is a political struggle, and it is written by a black woman called Nyamiki Daniel. And the headline says, Kaylee Gain's family backtracks, admits that she made a terrible choice in a fight that left her with a fractured skull as a juvenile officer confirms black teen acted in self-defense. So first of all, this headline, complete and utter nonsense, total BS in every possible way, and the reason you know that is because of every word in this headline and the order that they're placed in. First and foremost, the family saying that she made a terrible choice to engage in a fight with the vicious Mornice, the girl that smashed her head into the concrete, is the most obvious statement humanly possible, and in no way, shape, or form at all whatsoever means that she is somehow deserving of that she was somehow responsible for getting her head smashed into the concrete, and it does not make that self-defense. So already absurd in every possible way, misconstruing the family in order to attack Kaylee, who was in fact victimized by Mornice, going too far after this fight was clearly and obviously over. But again, this is in the politics section, so you have to understand the racial politics behind it. Secondly, they say, according to a juvenile officer that testified, she acted in self-defense. Well, was this juvenile officer present during the course of these events? Because guess what? I didn't see this juvenile officer intervening. So the question I have for anybody is, what was this juvenile officer's relationship to this particular fight? Was this an eyewitness? How is this person, he or she, relevant to this situation? And why did he or she not break it up if he was actually there? Now, in reality, it looks like from the reading of this article, this officer's testimony has absolutely nothing to do with the relevant facts of the case. This would be somebody just reiterating something on behalf of Mornice and doesn't actually give us any valuable information. But this article says, look, the family backtracks and says this was a horrible mistake. Yeah, she has a brain bleed based on a stupid petty fight that she got in, and that she was acting in self-defense, and what they cite is that this girl threw the first punch in the fight. More proof has surfaced that a girl who was seen on a viral video slamming another teenager's head into the pavement near a Missouri school was acting in self-defense. Now, that is a bold claim that the girl who was smashing the other girl's head into the concrete after the fight was completely over and continued to do so is somehow defending herself, and that wasn't going too far, because that's what the criminal charges are all about. But this article gets much, much worse. According to a juvenile officer who testified in the St. Louis family court Friday, Mornice Desclous was responding to being punched first by Kaylee Gain, who was known as a serial fighter. The officer who is overseeing Mornice's case serves much like prosecutors in the adult system. So this article is written incredibly badly, incredibly poorly, and incredibly stupidly, because what we're actually seeing right here is that the prosecutor is trying to prevent Mornice from being charged as an adult, because if this actually showed up in front of a jury of 12 people, the prosecutor is in fear of what the outcome would be for Mornice. So the prosecutor is defending Mornice and actually defaming the character of the girl who was attacked by calling her a serial fighter. Now, by the way, it may in fact be true that Kaylee Gain was a serial fighter. It may in fact be true that she was a troublemaker. But first and foremost, I never in the history of ever want to hear any black outlets or black media figures in the future ever get mad when you bring up the relevant criminal history or even the irrelevant criminal history of a black suspect when they are killed and or injured by the police, because they're doing this right here to a girl who's 16 years old who, again, traumatic brain injury. So Kaylee Gain might be somebody who gets into a bunch of fights. In fact, I would say that if the prosecutor is putting this forward, if you have all these different other sources that say that this is a pattern of behavior, then fine. But the fact of the matter is, being a consistent fighter, somebody who continues to F around, doesn't justify you smashing that person's head into the pavement over and over again when you won the fight. It is not self-defense to climb on top of a girl that is half your size, grab her by the head, and smash her head into the concrete until she starts convulsing. That's what happened in this particular case. And the prosecutor right here is defaming the victim and trying to make sure that this stays in the juvenile realm rather than go to the public realm. And on top of that, was advocating for the release of Mornice onto the streets based on the fact that she is a good student, apparently. That's something that we should be concerned with. And by the way, some supporting information for the argument that Kaylee Gain did get into fights is that the defense attorney for Mornice actually did say to the court that she was suspended, Kaylee Gain, the day prior for a different other physical altercation that occurred during the school day. So we do probably have a history of Kaylee Gain starting fights. And by the way, this is a very harsh lesson learned about starting a fight. But the fact of the matter is, the issue is the escalation, and Mornice definitely escalated. You are going to find it very difficult to argue that putting somebody's head square into the pavement 3 times on video, maybe 4 times because the camera's kind of whipping around until the point that she's convulsing, until the point that she had a brain bleed, is somehow covered under self-defense. It was a regular, ordinary fight that escalated far beyond. That's why the video went viral. Brutal beating that shocked many after it was captured on video depicted Mornice as the violent aggressor who heartlessly brutalized Gain, leading her family to campaign for the 15-year-old to be tried as an adult after the alleged attack. However, Mornice's family, though regretful that the fight ended with Gain being hospitalized, argued that the behavior was abnormal for Mornice, who has good grades and no history of disciplinary issues. Quote, "My family, my church, we all prayed for KG, Kaylee Gain," Consuela Deque said in court Friday, according to the Riverfront Times. "I think she was just defending herself. I don't think she had any intent or thought that this would happen to KG. We are very sorry." So first of all, the good grades don't really care about that, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, to be clear, the family court definitely will care about that. They definitely do consider that. And in fact, it's something they take into account far more than you guys possibly realize out there in the audience. So I understand why that's brought up. Secondly, them saying that they prayed for KG, totally irrelevant to me. Does not matter, because likely the reason why they were praying for Kaylee Gain was because they didn't want her to die, because their daughter would have been charged with murder or at least a manslaughter based on the fact that she could have died from this vicious attack. And thirdly, the fact that they said, oh, it was self-defense, she didn't intend to cause harm and all of that nonsense. The fact of the matter is, you're engaging in a fight. This idea that it's self-defense and not mutual combat when we see both parties square up, the idea that we're going to count who threw the first punch when everybody had their fists up ready to fight, absurd in every possible way. The point of this is not that it's a regular ordinary fight. Regular ordinary fight, suspension. Kaylee Gain, according to the records, quite familiar with that. The point of this is that this escalated far beyond what is ordinary for a fight, and I don't think there's any excuse for it. On top of that, they cite repeatedly that Kaylee Gain has the disciplinary record, and Mornice, innocent angel, never did anything wrong. But we actually talked about this school on our previous video, how it won a DEI award, and one of the things that it won a DEI reward for was, guess what? Their disciplinary policy. That was in line with the federal government's policy under the Obama administration and reintroduced under the Biden administration, which heavily incentivizes schools to not suspend black kids because they don't like the results of the suspension rates across the country, even though those results are based on the behavior of the black kids. They call it inequitable discipline because black kids get suspended more. Now, this should surprise nobody because black people commit more crimes, and when you have the same age demographic that's starting to enter their peak offending years in school, there should be no reason why people would be surprised that they would also have higher disproportionate rates of disciplinary infractions. So it could be that she's a good student with good grades that never had any behavioral issues, or it could be that she's somebody with good grades who did have behavioral issues and was given slap on the wrist after slap on the wrist, because clearly and obviously she was perfectly willing to engage in this fight. Clearly and obviously she was perfectly willing to smash another human being's head into the concrete without regard of her life or the damage that she was causing. And the fact of the matter is, we won't know based on the fact that these policies are introduced and they're promoted by the federal government to these different school districts. And by the way, this school had an award-winning version of one of these said policies. And to my point about this being mutual combat, Clinton Gain, Kaylee's father, told the New York Post that they found text messages that showed that the two girls agreed to meet up and fight that day. He also acknowledged that his daughter got into prior physical altercations, and then they end up using this quote in the headline, but they totally butcher it, and I just want to point out the difference between the headline and the actual quote. The quote is, "A terrible choice was made by two teenage girls to solve their issues with violence. This caused one of them to go too far with their bare hands and a concrete road." Now that's a quote from Kaylee Gain's stepmother, but if you notice in the headline, it says Kaylee made a terrible mistake, but in reality, the stepmother is acknowledging that both girls made a mistake in engaging in the fight, trying to use physical violence to solve whatever issue there was. But even in that quote, she says one of them went too far by smashing a head into the concrete. Yet, it's in the headline that they're backtracking based on their demonization of this girl, who they said should be charged as an adult, which, by the way, makes sense. Their daughter, according to the victim impact statement, is likely to need lifelong Medicare because of the head smashing, not because of the fight, because of that step too far. But this article and a bunch of different people in the media are taking this opportunity to say even the parents are throwing Kaylee Gain under the bus. They're trying to manipulate the narrative because they believe that this large black girl who smashed a white girl's head into the concrete based solely on the fact that she's black is somehow an innocent angel and can do no wrong. This is the narrative that is being spun right here. I've been on point about this story since my first video covering it. I gave you the full videos in context. Some of you didn't like that out there in the audience, but you know what? It's better to be right and hated than have to come back later and do a retraction. And all I've covered so far has been 100% true, and now we have to deal with the consequences of people rallying around this girl for smashing the white girl's head into the thing. Because while I maintain that this crime is actually not racially motivated based on the makeup of both groups, based on the fact that they were just fighting over whatever they were fighting over, I will point out that the reaction from many people is racially motivated. And the fact of the matter is, a lot of people in these black outlets, black media figures, actually like the idea of this girl potentially getting away with smashing a white girl's head into the pavement. But you know what? Those are just my thoughts. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below. If you like this video, then show me by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on my social medias, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about the destruction of the character of Kaylee Gain. Till next time.